Okay, let's do this. Hello, people. Another beautiful day. Yep. Hope your five senses work. Health and strength is good or excellent. What? All right. What I got for you guys? We're talking about this Activision merger case again. Listen to this one. What's up, Tweaktown? Listen to this article. The CMA on Microsoft Activision merger. We're not doing bidding of other agencies. In this article, it talks about limited discussion, and it talks about waivers were not in place, so they were having conversations before the waivers were in place. Listen to this. It says here, the CMA CEO Sarah Cardle says that the agency had limited discussion with the FTC regarding the Microsoft Activision merger before their decision to block. Says your Competition and Market Authority CEO Sarah Cardle refutes claims that the UK agency is somehow colluding with overseas regulators like the FTC in the United States as it relates to the Microsoft Activision merger. Says here, UK Merger Control Agency CMA chose to block the $68.7 billion merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King on the grounds of anti-competitive effects arising in the cloud gaming segment. The FTC has also chosen to sue to attempt to block the merger from happening on similar grounds, adding potential harm effects on multi-game subscription and console market. While the European Commission also identified these concerns, the European Commission cleared and approved the merger because Microsoft's expansive cloud remedies satisfy anti-competitive worries. Says here, following both the FTC and the CMA decision to block the merger on similar grounds, there have been reports that both agencies had affected and influenced their individual decisions. The FTC has refuted these claims on multiple occasions, with the FTC chair, Lena Kant, refuting claims that the FTC outsourced policies to overseas regulators, and the FTC spokesperson Douglas Farr denied claims from Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick that the FTC and the CMA had met specifically so that the FTC could convince the CMA to block the deal. Alright. Says here, the Activision Blizzard CEO has also said that the CMA had been co-opted by the FTC ideology and that the British agency was being used as a tool by the FTC. For reference, in its final decision report, where it determines that the Microsoft Activision merger would lessen competition, the CMA confirmed that it had consulted with both FTC in the United States and the European Commission. We have also been conscious of the international context and have consulted with other competition authorities, including the EU and the US. The CMA said in the report, now in a Business and Trade Committee hearing with the British government, Competition and Market Authority CEO Sarah Cardle elaborates on timing of the CMA discussion with the FTC and the European Commission, and also described the process in which these discussions took place. Below we have a transcription of the pertinent detail of the hearing as it relates to Microsoft Activision merger. Question. On the international aspect of this, to what extent does the CMA discuss and coordinates with authorities considering the same merger in other jurisdictions? For example, did you interact with the FTC in the US and the European Commission in the stages of examining this case, and what weight do you put on those discussions? And then CMA Sarah Cardle answers, the starting point I should emphasize is that we are very mindful that post-BRICS we are looking at significantly larger number of global transactions that we have done previously. That means as a merger control authority, we are likely to be looking at deals alongside other authorities such as the European Commission and the US authorities. So when we're looking at those deals, of course we are highly mindful of the fact that we want to ensure continuity and integrity of the analysis to extent possible. Alongside that, our responsibility at the end of the day is to look at the impact to the UK. So we're balancing those aspects. To answer your question, then in terms of specific and engagements, the extent to which we engage with other authorities on individual cases will depend on whether there are waivers in place from the merging of parties that enable us to have specific conversation in relations to the deal. In this case, for example, we had a waiver in place that was granted by parties that enable us to have conversations with the European Commission at appropriate points. And then it says, when asked if the FTC in the U.S. was also a part of these discussions, Cardle replies, "I am not sure. It's appropriate to get into the specific of the case. In the latter stages, we did not have a waiver in place, and therefore we were restricted in our abilities to have discussions. When asked how late the latter stages of the CMA process were, Cardle said, "I don't have the specific detail on that position chain." Cardle was pressed further on a better definition on the timeline. Did the CMA have talks with the FTC during X numbers of weeks or months before the CMA passed its decision? Says here her response, "It would have been general conversations with the FTC, but we were limited in the conversation that we had because there was no waiver in place." That means they had a conversation, okay? They're using the waiver as an excuse. Anyway, says here, the committee posed an interesting question to Cardle. In the merger and acquisition space, it seems that the CMA can act on future theories of harm because the process is not litigation, but in the United States, the FTC has to demonstrate evidence of harm due to its litigation process. Then it says Cardle was asked to respond, and she said, "The CMA makes its decision based on our assessment of the merger, and absolutely not. I would like to clarify this because there been some misconception, particularly in the press. We absolutely not doing the bidding of other agencies. We undertake our own analysis, and as I have mentioned before, we have our independent panel who are responsible for those discussions and take those responsibilities incredibly seriously." Says here, the forward-looking nature of the merger control assessment is common to all jurisdictions. It inherits in nature of a merger control assessment that you are looking at the impact of the merger. So essentially, you are saying, let's take the position in the market without the merger. How do you think that will evolve? How will competition evolve in the absence of the merger? And then you compare the position in the event of the merger goes ahead. What impact that will have on competition? So that's a forward-looking assessment in any jurisdiction. We are in common with other agencies who draw in a whole range of different evidence. To do that, we will hear from the merging parties or third parties. We're looking at business plans. We will undertake economic analysis and draw on a whole host of different evidence. And we will undertake a forward-looking assessment because that inherits in the regimes. Our standards in the UK is that we have to establish on the balance of probabilities if it's more likely than not that the merger will resolve in a lesson of competition. Says here, the standard in the US is a litigation standard, but the analysis is inherently the same. The evidence will the evidence base will be inherently the same, and that's also true with the European Commission. Our assessment is then the subject to judicial review by the Competition Appeal Tribunal in the UK. That is a rigorous process of judicial reviews. We take it incredibly seriously in making sure that our case is well evidenced and our positions are well founded. And then it says here, question on the CMA decision with the FTC. In relations to the issues of the US FTC, you weren't terribly clear about the extent of your communication. Are you happy to say details to the committee in private if necessary how many contacts you had or have written with the US FTC in relation to the case? And then it says here, we can provide further to the committee, yes. So you will be able to say over the last X numbers of months, these are the amount of discussions that were had. Subject appropriate confidentiality. We will follow up with these committee. Yes. And that's the end of the article. Good article, Tweakdown. Took me about 11 minutes. Should have took me 10. But anyway. Well, sounds like somebody got caught with their hands in a cookie jar. They tried to use they said limited communication, and then tried to use the waiver as an excuse that the waiver wasn't in place. Well, the truth will come to the light, like they always say. And the courts they don't play, because everyone that the FTC, the CMA, they got some questions. They got some questions to answer. Because just because you buy a studio, it doesn't stop competition. When Microsoft bought ZeniMax Bethesda, did it stop competition? Nope. So Activision Blizzard, Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard, doesn't stop competition, and it doesn't stop the game industry from growing. Activision was really up for grabs, and any company with big pockets can get them. So yeah. The FTC, they tried to remove Nintendo from the picture. But they can't do that because they trying to say how does Call of Duty? They trying to figure out how can Call of Duty run on the Switch. Well, let's see here. The proof is Call of Duty on the 3DS, Call of Duty on the GameCube, and Call of Duty on the Wii. So the FTC got some explanation to do. So it seems like the CMA is like trying to do their dirt and cover their hands, so to speak, but they can't do it because you can't say you had limited conversation and then try to use the waiver as an excuse. Well, the waiver was not in place. Nonsense. You were talking before the waiver got in place. So yeah, they got some explanation to do, man. Especially in front of a tribunal too, because the tribunal, they're smart. They're smart people. They can tell when people are lying or not. So yeah. And over here in the of course you got the courts in the United Nations to deal with, and then here in the U.S. you got the Supreme Court. So this case is far from over. Microsoft has let's see, how many countries now? Let's see, Serbia, Chile, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, Japan, South Africa, and China. So that's nine or eight countries supporting this, and those countries are governments and they have attorneys, And lawyers? Yeah. And then you got, what, Tencent? Tencent and Nvidia supports Microsoft on this? Okay. Yeah. You got, what, Valve and Take-Two are spectators, but Valve got their own little court case to deal with the Rumble feature on the Steam Deck. Who else? Well, they got 98% of the shareholders, 75% of the public. All the employees agreed to this deal. Yeah, they got some. The CMA got some explanation to do because Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard doesn't stop competition. The European Commission approved the deal because Microsoft provided remedies, you know, to the for the deal, because let's see here. Okay, you got Enware, EE, Ubitus, Boosteroid, Nvidia, and Nintendo. Microsoft was giving out 10-year contracts, so they didn't leave anybody out when it comes to those games. And Nintendo, on the other hand, they have to step their game up with their hardware because now they're getting some heavy duty games to run, so they got to fix that little part with their consoles. But like I've been saying before, the Switch should have never been built. They should have stayed with the Wii U and refreshed it. But anyway, so they can utilize the games. But other than that, Microsoft gave out remedies, gave out 10-year contracts, and free contracts. They don't have to pay for the licensing fee. So yeah, a lot of benefits that comes with it. Nvidia is already getting Xbox games on GeForce now. Yeah. Then on top of that, Nvidia DLSS 3 supports up to 300 games. Yeah. So Nvidia looking pretty good right now. Ever since that EVGA situation. But then again, but Nvidia also said 8 gig of video RAM is not enough. So if that's the case, then the same rule applies to our RAMs on a desktop. 8 gig of RAM is nothing. So yeah. Other than that, man, Microsoft, gave everybody contracts, so nobody is left out. Google could have signed up; it would have helped their Stadia. Even Amazon. So, even though they're competitors with Microsoft, Microsoft is looking out for everybody. The 10-year contracts too also supports Android and who else? I think Android and iOS. So yeah, and wait a minute. I think the Epic Game Store, Xbox games in the Epic Game Store is on GeForce, Nvidia GeForce. So yeah, Nvidia's looking good, but like I said though, Microsoft took care of everyone, because they weren't like they said it doesn't make sense to keep. They're not trying to keep Call of Duty to themselves. So yeah, but other than that, man, the CMA, the FTC, they want to talk about litigations in the U.S. or the FTC got their hands full because you can't remove Nintendo, and you try to remove them out the picture and try to say Call of Duty can't run on the Switch. Well, you're gonna have to prove that physically, because if Call of Duty can run on the 3DS and the GameCube and the Wii, so what does that say about the Switch? So yeah, the CMA and the FTC got some explanation to do, and this case is going to go to the higher courts, whether whether overseas or in the United States, it's going to go to the higher courts. But other than that, I'll keep you guys posted on anything that's going on. So yeah, another saga, another chapter in the Activision Blizzard case. Anyway, leave this video for y'all to enjoy. Nice talking to you people again. Chris, still a Star Wars and Star Trek fan. Or Dark Side. Go. Peace.